The Candid Frame is supported by donations by listeners just like you. Help us to bring you great conversations with great photographers. Support the show today with your monthly contribution through our Patreon effort at patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or click on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. Thank you.
This episode of The Candid Frame is sponsored by Storyblocks. It's the first and only subscription-based stock media company that offers unlimited downloads of member library content for a modest annual fee of just $149 a year per site, while providing its contributing artists 100% of the sales from their photographs, video, or audio. To find out more, visit storyblocks.com/candid. We also have the support of LinkedIn Learning, the online learning platform with thousands of expert-led video tutorials to help you build your creative, tech, and business skills. For a free 30-day trial, visit linkedin.com/candid and start achieving more today. This is Ibiza and X, and this is The Candid Frame. Once you make a decision to make a living as a photographer, your biggest challenge has little to do with the camera. It's not about lighting or shutter speeds or Photoshop. It's more about running a business, which anybody will tell you is always the biggest challenge about making a living from something that you love. Dixie Dixon is a photographer that understood that even before she was out of her teens. Instead of an arts degree, she earned a business degree that, along with a lot of talent and perseverance, earned her a successful career as a fashion and commercial photographer, as well as being honored as a Nikon brand ambassador. Get ready for a lot of wisdom from this photographer, straight from the heart of Texas. Well, Dixie, welcome to The Candid Frame. It's a pleasure to finally have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be a part of it.
You're quite an amazing photographer, and you have a wonderful story to tell. And one of the things that I find most interesting about you is that, very early on, I think when you were starting college, you decided to get a business degree. And there are so many photographers who start off their career because they just focus on the art. And you were savvy enough in your teen years to know that in order to be able to do this for a living, you had to get savvy in terms of business. How could you have come to that realization so young?
That is a very good question. I have always been a little bit of a business nerd. I mean, I was reading investing books when I was in, high school.
Wow.
And so I always think I've been fascinated by business and inspired by business. So I wanted to learn how I could actually have my own business for a living, because I am not the type of person that does well in a 9-to-5. And I think I always knew that about myself. And so, the business thing came pretty early. I'm not really sure who put that bug in my ear, but something clicked.
Did you take inspiration from maybe one of your parents or someone who you actually saw having their own business, or this is something that you just sort of created out of whole cloth for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he's an engineer, and my mom was always really passionate about fashion and marketing. So definitely inspired by both of them. For sure, they always told me and pushed me to do what I love and do my passion, because I'm going to spend so much time, my whole life working. I might as well be doing something that I absolutely love. And if you can actually figure out how to make your hobby into a business, it can be a pretty incredibly rewarding thing. And a lot of people, may not get that opportunity, but, I've always kind of put that out into my vision for some reason. I mean, for instance, when I graduated college, I applied for an investment job. I actually got the job and ended up turning it down because I had this mentor that was like, you know what, if you're going to pursue photography, now is the time. You're not stuck in a lifestyle. You don't have a family. Now is the time to go for it. And so I ended up turning that job down and going for photography just 100%. And it actually ended up working out. It's kind of crazy how these things lead you down certain paths.
Okay, but tell me about that moment. I mean, here you have a job offer that's offering you probably good money, benefits,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden this sort of nebulous idea in terms of a career as a photographer, which you may not have exactly known how that would turn out.
Yeah.
Tell me about that moment, because that's a critical moment in which to make a decision like that. And a lot of people kind of go the safe route. Other people make the leap. But tell me about, what kind of angst were you going through in this making that choice, if any, and and what helped you to make the choice that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I came to the realization that you can either give in to fear. Fear is always powerful. Or you can push through that and really go for what you really, really want. And obviously it took me some time to make that decision. I mean, I talked to my mentor. He was an entrepreneur that I worked with through college. And he's really an inspiration. His name's Calvin King. And I was, it was just one of those moments where it's like now or never. So I don't know. I made the plunge and I was shooting weddings. I was shooting portraits. I mean, literally I was shooting everything to pay the bills, until I was able to start breaking into the commercial industry. And it definitely took some time. And there were days where, I would be, I lived well beneath my means. I mean, it was a tricky process to break into photography because when you're starting out, you're not getting paid big bucks to shoot things.
Right.
I was living very frugally, I'll put it that way. But it was all worth it. It's paid off, obviously, now. But I think that just giving into fear, you just got to push through it. If it's something that you fear, it's usually something telling you need to go for it, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you do when you are feeling that fear and feeling that anxiety about a choice?
Yeah.
What are the things that you do to sort of help you to move through that fear rather than just getting on that hamster wheel, right? And just living in that fear for way too long?
Yes. Recently the fear, like for instance, on jobs that I'm doing now, there's usually a lot of pressure because it's an advertising firm, it's a client, it's 20 people on set. There's a lot of pressure. So I've had to really work through that fear because, there's just so much pressure on set these days. So I meditate now. I do a lot of meditation and silencing my mind for 15 minutes before I go out and do what I need to do. That really is helpful. Just if you can clear your mind for 15 minutes a day, I think it can really have a huge impact in your world. And so I actually have a meditation app that I use. It's Deepak Chopra and Oprah.
Oh, yeah?
It's amazing, actually. I really love it.
I use one called from Meditation Oasis, it's called.
Oh, nice. I haven't heard of that one.
Oh, you really have to check it out.
Oh,
They have an
cool.
app called Simply Being. And the woman has a wonderful voice. I've tried a bunch of different apps, but her voice is just perfect for me because that's how I start my morning.
Yes.
With a meditation. And I just listen to her, and it's just gets me in that right headspace to start the day.
That's amazing. Well, I do have to say that you have the most calming voice ever.
Oh, thanks.
I could listen to your voice and be totally calm.
I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
So, one of the things that I'm really kind of curious to hear from you is that because you were focused on business, you made time to go out and learn your photography. I think you were largely self-taught. Though you were working with a fashion photographer at one point. But I think sometimes people think, oh, I have to be knowledgeable to a great extent about photography before I can, hang my shingle out and say I'm a photographer, right?
Right. Right.
So I'm wondering about, as you were sort of going out there trying to make, your living as a photographer, I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that you didn't know technically, but how did having business savvy help you, even though you may not have known as much about, say, the technical side of photography as a competitor?
Yeah, absolutely. The business degree was really helpful for me because I took a lot of classes in entrepreneurship, and one of my business teachers, he was amazing because he was actually an entrepreneur. He wasn't just a teacher. He was actually, he actually had his own business. and his name's David Miner. And he told me one day in class, he's like, if you're interested in having a business in a certain industry, join all the trade organizations involved in that industry so that you can learn a lot quicker than you can just do it on your own. So literally that night, I went home and I joined the student versions of WPPI, PPA, Imaging, the Association of Advertising Photographers, the ASMP. I literally joined every trade organization I could get my hands on, the student version. And then I started entering contests through those organizations. And to my luck, I won one of the contests and got to attend WPPI for free. And they paid all of my expenses. This was right out of college. And so I really got to know a lot of great photographers in the industry and also the business side of things by joining this trade organization. So that was definitely really helpful. So that business degree kind of led me to that moment. And also just with marketing and branding, which is so huge these days, I took a lot of great marketing classes to learn the importance of building a brand, not just a business. That definitely was helpful. I mean, photographers, definitely it's important to take some marketing classes or try to work on your marketing. I mean, the accounting was important. There were so many aspects of business that, I may not be an expert at, but I was able to learn the basics and to understand and have an understanding of what it takes to run a business. And I think that's made a huge impact in my photography.
A lot of people make the excuse that, I can't do that because I don't know how to do it. Right.
Right.
And in your career, I'm sure that there were moments both on the photography side and on the business side where you didn't know something you might have felt you needed to know. So when you face such moments, and if you can give me an example, how did you move through the fact that you may not have had that knowledge at that moment, but you didn't allow that to be an obstacle in terms of being able to do what you needed to do? Oh,
that's a good question. It's funny. I feel like we have no excuses these days. We have Google. So, there's a lot of things. Most things that I know now, I had no idea about. And a lot of it is through either having a mentor, attending trade shows, or through just me Googling things. Like, for instance, I'm getting into video right now. I'm really trying to learn video. And so I'm just looking at different YouTube videos and trying to get a handle on what that is. Because, yes, you can make excuses all the time, but that really just inhibits yourself. Excuses, either you do it or you make an excuse, basically. So, I don't know, you just got to push through that and stop making excuses, because you'll get over that hump quicker and you'll be on to the next thing. So, I think I love learning. I'm a nerd. I'm a big nerd. So learning has always been really fun to me. Maybe that's helped.
Can you give me one example of when you face just that reality where you were like feeling nervous or anxious about the fact you didn't know how to do something, and then you went, okay, I'm going to have to figure out this problem. And then you were able to do that by whatever means that you discovered?
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of that, and I may butcher this, but that Richard Branson quote, he says, if you're given an opportunity that you're definitely not prepared for or you don't know how to do, accept the opportunity and figure it out later. Mm-hmm. So I always say what I don't know in knowledge, I make up for in enthusiasm. There's been a ton of instances. Like, for instance, I directed my first commercial a couple years ago, my first TV commercial. I had never shot video. I had never directed video before. But an opportunity came up where a client in a production company, they were wanting me to direct a hair commercial, and they wanted more of a fashion vibe as opposed to, their normal commercials they were doing. So they brought me in because of my fashion expertise. And, I was 100% honest with them. And I said, I've never actually directed a commercial before, but I'm confident that I can figure it out. And they said, yeah, well, we're willing to take that chance. And it's funny because I did a lot of research and sort of looked at a bunch of inspiration videos and figured out what made a successful TV commercial, hair commercial. And fast forward, we go to the shoot. I had a shot list, and I was able to hire some models that I worked with on still shoots. And it felt very seamless. And fast forward like a year, the commercial ended up winning an Addy Award. And so it's kind of crazy. I could have said, no, I've never done that before, I can't do it, but instead say yes to things. You're going to learn more from trying than you are just turning it down.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Let me follow up with that, because you said something interesting, is that even though you didn't have the experience, they were fine with it because they believed there was something that you brought to the table that supplanted hiring someone who has the resume and has done a bunch of different commercials. So what was it that they saw in you or had experience with you that convinced them that Dixie's the right person for this?
That's a very good question. I'm glad that they did take that chance. I think that they had seen, I've been slowly moving into video, and for almost every shoot that I do now, I'm doing behind the scenes films that I kind of basically art direct and direct the video. Like I have a cinematographer come and film, and I tell them what to film, and then I'll choose the music that goes with it, and then, help with the edit and kind of art direct the edit. So I'd been doing a lot of those behind the scenes films, which look cool and fashionable. So I think it was the combination of that they were seeing that I was kind of putting out into the universe, that I wanted to get more into video. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the fact that they knew me. They had actually, it was Red Productions, and they had worked with me in college. So I guess they knew I was a hard worker, and then they'd seen my still photography work that was fashion. So I guess the combination of those things enabled them to make that decision.
If your job involves producing video content, websites, newsletters, or presentations, you know the value of good visual content. No one wants to look at a bunch of text on a screen, not unless you want to be put immediately to sleep. You need good photographs, illustration, audio, video to keep people interested and engaged. And the reality is that you can't produce all that by yourself. So where do you go? Storyblocks provides just that kind of solution. And not only is it affordable, it also provides income for the content creators themselves, whether they are a photographer, videographer, or illustrator. That's because Storyblocks provide you access to high-resolution photo, vector, or images, and they are all royalty-free. And for creators who contribute their work, it's also great because they enjoy 100% of the sales commission. To find out more, go to storyblocks.com/candid to get all the stock images, video, and audio you can imagine for just $149. That's storyblocks.com/candid to download anything from thousands of images, video, and tracks, and unlock discounts from millions more. One of the things that I like about you in your career is, I like your pictures first and foremost. That's always important. But from the business side of things, you're incredibly good in terms of marketing yourself.
Oh, well, thank you.
And that's something that I think a lot of photographers aren't comfortable with, me included. And I've had to sort of learn that that's part and parcel of the game.
Yeah.
But one of the things that immediately identifies you is that hat. Right? I mean, you think about Dixie and you think about the hat, and I'm thinking, how intentional was that? Where does that come from?
Well, I see a hat in your profile picture. I love your.
Well, I got a bald head. I gotta protect it somehow.
It looks great. It's funny. I've always loved hats from a very, very young age. I mean, I look at pictures when I was probably 5 years old, like my school picture, I had a hat on. It's just really funny to see how far back that started. And I think I've always enjoyed fashion and costumes. And so I feel like the hat is part of my photography costume that I feel more creative when I'm shooting, when I have a hat on. I feel like a photographer. But I mean, honestly, I think my mom was a big part of that, because she's like, you need to do things in your brand that really set you apart, because you are your brand basically in photography. Not just your pictures, but your, whole personality that comes through and everything that you do. And so she's like, you should always wear a hat when you shoot. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So I started doing that, and now it's just become a thing. So always wearing a hat. I have a huge hat rack behind me of like 30 hats.
30? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Some girls are into shoes. I'm into hats.
Yeah, my wife's got you on the shoes.
Nice.
No doubt of that.
Well, the good thing about shoes and hats is they always fit. So I always love that. That's awesome.
So tell me about feeling comfortable with sort of promoting yourself as much as you are your photography. Because one of the things that people think, oh, it's always just about the work. People look at the work and then they go, oh, let's hire this person because they're the first person that produces the photographs. And oftentimes it's not just about the images. I mean, that's maybe the foot they get, get you in the door, get your foot in the door. But it's oftentimes about, do I want to work with this person? Are they going to be fun? Are they going to be someone I would like to hang out with? In terms of you sort of promoting yourself, how important has that been in terms of not only getting your clients in the first place, but getting them for repeat business?
It's really interesting. Matthew Jordan Smith was I learned a lot from him in that sort of way because I always went to his seminars in Dallas and was able to intern with him in LA. And he always drove home how important, if you want to create a sustainable photography career, he always drilled the fact that you have to create an incredible experience on set. Because the truth is people want to work with people they enjoy working with. If they hire a photographer and he has a huge ego and, is just really awful to work with, the likelihood of them rehiring that photographer, I don't think is nearly as great. Especially when you're starting out, I think is really, really important because you don't have you don't have all these big clients under your belt that can vouch for you. So it's really important to create a fun experience on set. I always have music playing. I always have food on set. And really, I don't allow any negative energy on set as well. I think that's a really important part. Like if someone is bringing drama or negative vibes to the set, I'll take them aside and talk with them, like what's going on with your day. And that's very rare because I set the tone for that positivity and excitement and showering the models with compliments, getting to know the client. I like to get to know people before they even arrive. Just to create a good environment because, photography is really all about relationships and it's all about people and connection. So you want to create an experience in a atmosphere that allows that to happen, essentially. So I'm really big on that. And that's what shoot days are the most fun days. It's just an incredible experience. So I think it's important to be nice, obviously, be humble, and just enjoy the process. I always try to have people set their egos aside.
So how do you find the people that you've come to rely on in terms of stylists, hair, makeup, assistants? Because you obviously have worked all over the world, but you probably have a core group of people with whom you collaborate. How do you find them, and what are you looking for in each of those people? Absolutely.
I think that talent is one thing, like you said earlier. It's important to work with artists that are going to bring something to the table and bring something to your work. And that's a lot of trial and error. When I was starting out, I was on Model Mayhem and I was networking with a lot of creatives, stylists, hair and makeup models. So that was sort of the starting point of me kind of building I call them the dream team because they're incredible group of people that I get to work with now on set. And then, so it's kind of through getting to know different people. For instance, my agent at the time referred me to an incredible lighting technician, Eric Jang. So I work with him on almost every shoot. We have the same taste in lighting. We just have the same creative sort of vibe and a similar energy and enthusiasm for working. And so we work together a lot. And then my producer, I actually have been working with for about 6 years, and I just hired her on full time a year and a half ago. So that's been really, really cool. I've never had someone that I could work with full time before. Normally everything's contract work, but I think it's a lot of networking. Facebook is really great. If I'm going to an area where I'm looking for a certain makeup artist, I'll look on Facebook and look at people's portfolios. And then I also like to get them on the phone and chat with them so I can get to know their personality. Because I think personality is really important, just so you vibe well and have people around you that are supporting you.
I'm sure that, because you started really young and you were actually getting commercial work when you were fairly young. Did you ever have to encounter people who were like, they come onto a set and they look around, they see you and they go, "Where's the photographer?"
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. That's always a funny experience. And they sort of have a freak out moment. Uh-huh. Yes, my first big campaign, I kind of felt that way. It was for a company, a shoe brand, and I walked on set, and I don't know how old I was, but I can remember the client was looking at me like, "Wait, you're shooting this?" So I sort of freaked out inside a little bit, but definitely kept my cool, and everything turned out fine. But it's always interesting. Pretty funny.
But when it came to those early gigs, because, there's a lot of, when you start getting involved in commercial work, you're not just dealing with personal projects. At that point, you're dealing with a budget. You're dealing with not only the crew that you've hired to do the job, but, all these other people who are really invested in the success of the imagery.
Yeah.
So, that part of it, I think, involves a different way of working beyond how you work with, say, the model or the stylist. What were some of the most important things that you learned early on that you felt were invaluable towards working with clients who are who have significant budgets that are at stake for these jobs?
I think the most important part of working with clients is communication. I mean, obviously, but to really, in the pre-production phase, before the shoot, to really get an understanding of their vision for the images, I think is really important. So to get them on the phone, on conference calls, and really just ask them a ton of questions about what they're looking for, have them send you inspiration images that they like, that they connect with for this particular shoot. Looking at their brand and getting to know their brand really well, looking at the typography and the fonts they use, the colors that they use. For instance, when I shoot for Nikon, different advertising and things, I never usually want to use the color red in any of the imagery, because that's obviously red is their competitor. So you have to think about these things creatively. And a lot of times they'll tell you these things. And really just I think the pre-production part of advertising and fashion is the most important aspect, because the planning and everything that goes into it is basically makes the shoot, because you're trying to get all these shots within a certain time period and a certain budget and everything. So if you can really get to know their vision really well before the shoot, and then have your shot list lined up, because you need to choose like which shot is going to be best to shoot during what time of day. So scouting the location is really important. And so it's a little different, like you said, shooting for clients than it is personal work. Because with personal work, a lot of times I'll just go into a location, I've chosen the model and the makeup and the wardrobe, but we kind of just go and have fun and just shoot off the cuff. That's really nice. That's like a really fun experience. But with clients, it has to be a lot more detailed and a lot more, lined up before the shoot.
We also have the support of LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is for creators, for the curious, and for those who want to advance their careers. Maybe you want to learn how to shoot raw or work in low light or sharpen your photo editing skills. Everything you need to achieve more is on LinkedIn Learning. Whether you shoot photos for work, for pleasure, or both, LinkedIn Learning can help you take your photography to the next level. Gear courses will help you get the most out of your camera, from DSLRs to mirrorless to smartphones. To help you enhance what you shoot, there's complete coverage for Lightroom and Photoshop, including CC 2018. In fact, they work closely with Adobe to release update courses the day new versions are released. And now you can take advantage of this great resource for free for 30 days. And while you're taking it out for a test drive, check out Chris Orwig's course on learning natural light portrait photography. It's a great course, but it's also a great example of the kind of invaluable content you'll find there. And the best thing is that there are no hidden charges or upsells. Access all the courses you want, all for one monthly price. You can get a free 30-day trial with LinkedIn Learning today by visiting linkedin.com/candid. That's linkedin.com/candid, all lowercase. And we thank them for sponsoring this podcast. And remember, when you support our sponsors, You help make this podcast possible. Well, one of the clients for people who listen to this show who are very familiar with is, of course, Nikon, and you're a Nikon ambassador. But you've created images for them to help promote new camera models, and I'm wondering what that assignment has been like. Do they give you a storyboard and go, okay, we want these kinds of images. Are you going to be using this camera? Or do they just sort of say, here are the bullet points we want you to hit. Here's a camera. Go to it. Or is it a hybrid of somewhere in between the two?
That completely depends on which, like if I'm working for Nikon USA or Nikon Japan, like Nikon USA they're incredible because they give you basically what they need and then they let you just go and create it. They kind of give you creative freedom in that way. Whereas with shooting brochures, a lot of times they'll have a storyboard and they'll have an exact shot list. So I guess really and truly it depends on what the final usage is for. Like for the brochure, you have to really showcase each capability separately. Whereas if it's just for promotion of the camera and just advertising in general, there's a little bit more leeway to work with. So it really kind of depends on what they're going to be using the final images or video for.
And I think your challenge is doubly so because sometimes you're handed a camera and you have not had the luxury of even reading a manual, right?
Right. That is very true.
And I know I get real nuts if all of a sudden, I have a new camera because I spend so much time trying to get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Right. And because I used the Fujifilm X-T2 when I was in South Africa, and I had it for a week, and it took me like 2 or 3 days just to get comfortable with where the controls were, and
right.
And I was really focused on the camera more so than just my normal seeing.
Yes.
And I can only imagine what it's like to do that under the pressure of having to deliver images for a client.
Yes.
So, give me an example of a time where you had to do sort of just that. And how do you sort of get over the hump of the fact that you're handling something that you're relying to make pictures, but that you really are not that familiar with yet?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's funny, the first time I had to do it, I was freaking out, but I've shot a lot of their cameras for the different advertising, so I feel like I've gotten used to it now. But the first one was for the D5500 brochure. It was it was like a touchscreen compact DSLR, so it's actually just like a cool hobbyist camera. Yeah, it's interesting because they don't want anything leaked. So they don't really let you work with the gear until they arrive at the shoot. So literally the night before, I'm looking at the camera. I'm like trying to go through all the settings and trying to get a feel for it and the touch screen and all these things. And it's really like like you said, you got to jump in and do it. It may not feel completely comfortable at first. But, it does help that I have shot Nikon my entire career. So a lot of the dials and things are very, similar to other camera bodies. So that definitely is helpful. But like, for instance, the D5 campaign that I shot in New York, they have to tape the logos. And also there's no Photoshop allowed. That was another kicker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they want like truth in advertising. They want to show exactly what comes out of that camera, like JPEG, as opposed to, most images you see now they're so heavily photoshopped. So they really want to show, that's one thing that's cool, I think, about Nikon. It really is truth in advertising. So a lot of the stuff that they use in the brochures, like none of it has been photoshopped. But that puts a lot more pressure on you as a photographer to get everything perfect in camera. You're using a new camera. So lighting has to be spot on. Everything has to be spot on. So there's definitely a lot of pressure. I think you got to roll with it.
So what do you do in order to get that image right in JPEG? I mean, you mentioned lighting is probably key amongst that.
Yeah.
What are you using in order to make sure that you're getting the right light? Are you sort of using strobes, scrims, reflectors, all of the above?
Yeah, really all the above. I mean, really it comes down to having a great team that I can trust and rely on. The makeup artist, I know that they're skilled and they can really make the skin look beautiful and flawless. My lighting technician, has an understanding that we can't do any retouching on these, so we've really got to light them effectively. And, yeah, just getting things right in camera and having it pre-planned in your head, exactly how you're going to approach the shoot and the model and the lighting, I think is really important. But really, it just comes through muscle memory, essentially. I mean, I've been shooting for so long now that it does add more pressure, but, you know, sometimes pressure can be good. It can really get you on your A game. So, yeah.
So how did you develop your relationship with Nikon? I'm sure that people ask you all the time how you became an ambassador, but you're actually working for them as a client. So how did that all come about?
You know, I talked about earlier about that award that I won to go to WPPI. So I went to that, you know, right out of college. And so I started going to WPPI every single year. And so fast forward a few years, the president of Rangefinder magazine, who's the one that gave me that award, ended up in a trade show because I'd been shooting fashion work and he'd been keeping updated on all my portfolio work and client work and everything. So like I was going through a trade show and he walked over and he's like, there's someone I really want to introduce you to. So he introduced me to a marketing director at Nikon. He said, you guys should connect. I think that there may be some good opportunities there. And so the marketing director said, hey, you know, you look like you're just out of college, but I would love to critique your book, you know. And so I said, awesome, that'd be great. So he set an appointment in the Nikon lounge. And so I was able to bring my portfolio book. And, you know, it's funny because I didn't have a portfolio book with me. But luckily, one of the companies, Graphy Studio, who prints all my portfolios, they had some samples with all my work in them at their booth. So luckily, I went over to Graphy Studio the next day before the meeting, and I said, hey, can I borrow one of my books for an hour? So they said, yeah, you can borrow one of the books. So I ran over there to their booth and grabbed my portfolio, and then I went to the meeting, and the marketing director is scrolling through my work in the portfolio, and he said, wow, you did this work. This is really cool. You know, maybe there might be an opportunity for us to work together in the future. And he just basically said, you know, keep me updated, you know, once every 3 weeks or a month and on the new stuff you're shooting with your Nikons, and we'll see if something comes up down the line. So I kept them updated for about a year on all of my new work. And then eventually they asked if they could do a feature on me in Nikon World magazine, and one of the images I submitted ended up making the cover. And then they asked me to speak at their booth about some of their gear, and then that led to them asking me to shoot some of their new camera campaigns. So it's kind of like an organic experience. But that's how it happened. And
you're one of the youngest ambassadors they've ever had. How did you feel when they extended that to you? Because there are some big names on that roster.
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's funny. That was probably the most surreal experience I think of my whole career. I mean, they launched the ambassador program, and it was 16 ambassadors, and I think I along with a couple others, were kind of in the more emerging part, but they wanted a good mix within the ambassador program. So yeah, that was definitely I think that's probably the most favorite moment of my photography career this far, because I think I always wanted to work with Nikon, so I always shot Nikon, so it was cool to get to work with a company that I've loved my entire career.
But tell me about that moment when you had an opportunity to actually be in the same room with some of these other ambassadors who are because I know for myself that if I'm in a room with a bunch of people whose work I've known forever, and I feel like I've somehow snuck into the room.
Yes, I did feel that way. Like, who is this? Absolutely. I mean, there's just so much incredible talent. And, Joe McNally, it's incredible because I found that, I have all these idols like Joe McNally, just an incredible person, Matthew Jordan Smith, Corey Rich, Jerry Gionis. There's just so many people that I really look up to and that have helped me along the way. And so to get to be in the same room with them was such an honor and such a surreal experience. And one thing that I found is that the personality and the soul within the company is so giving, and it's everyone's there to help each other, and it's really an amazing company, which is what I love about it. But yeah, I definitely felt like, why am I in this room here? Definitely. So it was pretty fun.
You're incredibly busy. I mean, it took us a while to finally nail you down for this interview, but you've got a very successful business. You're producing amazing photographs all the time. Aww. But I wonder about, the time that you get to spend on just your own personal work. How do you sort of fit that in, and what does your personal work look like?
Yeah, so the personal work, like you said, it's always tricky when you're shooting client jobs and things like that to fit it in. But anytime I have a day or two off, or just spontaneous, if I'm in a location, for instance, if I'm doing a job in LA or something and I have an extra day off, a lot of times I like to just set up cool fashion test shoots. So I'll just call up the modeling agencies and say, hey, do you guys have any new, faces, or do you have models that need some new portfolio work? And then I'll just, basically set up a quick little test shoot with a model and a makeup artist, and just go shoot just out at a cool location. Like I did that the other day in LA at El Matador Beach. We ended up with some beautiful beachy type images. So that's kind of, the personal work tends to be more spontaneous these days because, you just never know when a job might come up. Like I did a test shoot last week with a model as well, and also practiced video. And it was just a model that I've been friends with for a while on Facebook. And I said, hey, I'd love to work with you and just create some cool beauty looks. So yeah, the personal work is kind of like that kind of thing. So eventually I'd like to do like maybe a coffee table book of personal work or something like that. But that's what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about your work is is the way the people that you photograph come off. And I know that you're oftentimes working with professional models and stuff, but I feel like the people in your photographs are really genuine. Then they're not just giving you the face.
Oh,
right?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Because you see people who are professional models and you feel like they're giving the face, they're giving the pose, right. And it's like, God, it's frustrating because you don't feel like there's anything genuine in that moment. And
right.
What do you do to sort of elicit that, especially from someone who's professional in front of the camera, who kind of knows, the looks that they can give that will please the majority of photographers, but when you're in pursuit of something more real, how do you draw that out?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's something that, I've been working on for a while, and it's funny, I always feel like I get the shot either in the very beginning. If a model is already super comfortable with me, they might give me their best look in the beginning. Or the other alternative is if, it takes a while, I totally wear them out and I will shoot so long that I eventually wear them out and their real personality starts coming out.
Okay.
So it's a way of shooting through moments and also getting to know them before the shoot. So getting them on the phone, talking with them, looking at their social profiles, what is their favorite music, what sports are they into, and then talking with them during hair and makeup to get to know them even better. And really just relating with them like a friend and just trying to get to know who they are, because the more that you know about them, the more you can create that connection on camera. And so I don't really do a lot of posing or anything like that. But on set, I just like to make people feel as comfortable and as amazing as possible. I mean, I shower them with compliments and, tell them how amazing they look, because photography, when at least I hate being photographed. And so I can, I guess, see how, when you're being photographed, like you're thinking of all your flaws. And if I can give them confidence as I'm shooting and make them feel more amazing, like, the real person that they are, super confident, super beautiful, and soulful, then I'm going to be able to bring that out of them easier if they already feel that way. So if I can set the tone and make them feel amazing, they're going to feel amazing and look amazing and comfortable in the pictures.
So what kind of, that makes sense. So what kind of photographer are you? Are you a photographer who sets up a shoot that has a real clear idea in terms of the image that they're going for, and it's all working towards that vision? Or are you a kind of photographer who sort of sets the stage with all the right elements and allows things to sort of play out and then sees? So it's the latter?
Yes, okay. Definitely. Yeah. So I set everything up in the ideal situation, and I know what I'm looking for. And then once I have the foundation there, and what I'm looking for, then I can let things happen organically. I think you said it perfectly.
Do you sometimes have to deal with things not, like we've talked about those moments of fear and anxiety, and when things are not, firing at all cylinders, and that all those people are around you thinking, she knows what she's doing, right? And then inside you're going, I'm still trying to figure this out, right? The clock is ticking, and all that other stuff. So in those moments, how do you mentioned meditation, but you can't say, okay, excuse me, I got to take my 15 minutes to meditate right now. All eyes are on you. So how do you move through that moment?
Basically, I will tell the client, hey, let me run to the restroom. Literally. That is literally what I do. Like if things are, not going well and I have to solve some problems and things are not clicking, like I always figure out a way to take a moment. And I said, let me run to the restroom and then we'll continue. And usually I'll, go get some water or, some caffeine and
Dixie's secrets are finally revealed.
That's right. That's how it happens. So literally that's always, people can't say, oh no, you can't do that. So
no,
it's a good tool.
That is gold to me. I never thought to do that because I have those moments because it's invaluable to take a step away sometimes. Right. And so you
can get your head on straight.
Right. And sometimes I'm not giving myself permission to pull away and then it just get deeper and deeper. But a bathroom run.
Use that one.
Yeah, I definitely will. Well, my last question that I ask each guest is I ask them to recommend another photographer for our listeners to discover and explore. And it can be anyone, someone you've long admired or someone you've recently discovered. So who would that photographer be and why?
Oh, gosh, that's really hard. I know there's so many that I love and that I admire. If I were you, I would interview a really good friend of mine, a photographer, Mike Curato. Have you heard of him?
Oh, I worked with Mike.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
Yeah.
So have you interviewed him before?
No, I have been thinking about interviewing Mike for a little while now, but you may give me the excuse to finally reach out to him.
Yes, he's a real inspiration. He's been such a huge inspiration in my career and just an incredible rock and roll photographer. He has this project that he's doing called Drummer Love, where he puts cameras on the drum kits at concerts and just incredible images. And so, yeah, I definitely would recommend him for this.
And a solid good guy.
Yes, absolutely. So great. He's amazing.
Well, Dixie, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It was a real pleasure.
Oh, you have been incredible. So appreciate you on all your great questions and everything. You're awesome.
Thanks to Dixie for sharing her time and her story. To find out more about her and her work, visit DixieDixon.com. And remember, I will be in Miami in December for the Miami Street Photography Festival, where I and several other photographers will be teaching workshops and classes. You can find out more by visiting MiamiStreetPhotographyFestival.org. And thank you for your continued support of The Candid Frame. We are close to releasing 400 episodes, and I would love to see a host of 5-star reviews to help promote the show before then. If you haven't already, please take the time today to write a review in the iTunes Store. Your ratings and comments help people to discover the great conversations that we offer here at TCF. You can also support the show by making a monthly contribution through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or you'll find a link in the show notes and the Candid Frame website. Or if you just want to make a one-time contribution to the show, you can do so via PayPal by clicking on the donate button on the Candid Frame website or in the show notes. To access our complete archive of interviews, download the free Candid Frame app, available for Apple iOS and Android. Not only will you immediately receive the latest episode on your phone or tablet, but you can now easily share your favorite episodes on your social networks and help spread the word. And if you want to drop me a line with comments or suggestions for the show, you can email me directly from the app. Download it today by clicking on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor, who you can find at theothermartintaylor.com. The show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker, and our music is from Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free music can be found at incompetech.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at simply @IbadianX. And this is Ibadian X, and this is The Candid Frame.